It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
Man, oh man, do we have a lot of news to talk about tonight. And good morning to you. My name is Dan Mandis indeed. Gary and Eric, they return next Sunday night, Monday morning. Always appreciate the opportunity to guest host on Red Eye Radio. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. By the way, as we've done all this week, my text line for my local show is open to the network. So if you want to chime in, you can text in 615-737-9986. And yeah, I'm glad that I've got 5 hours tonight because it's going to take me that long to cover all of the news. And so let's get right to it. By the way, follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. The Chicago Showdown, it has escalated. And do you know what the thing is? I feel like, and I know that, and I've got a lot of friends that are talk show hosts, and we're all thinking the same thing. We have been talking about this for weeks now, and nothing has happened. And so we're all just kind of waiting for something to happen, but it just feels like the situation is escalating slowly but surely. You know, you've got J.B. Pritzker, you've got Brandon Johnson, the mayor, you've got Donald Trump, you've got JD Vance, you've got all of the players every single day, and they are, presenting their case to the American people. Now, word is that advanced teams may already be in Chicago. That is part of the latest here. The Trump administration, they say they're not commenting on any specifics on the date for the president to send the National Guard into Chicago. J.D. Pritzker, by the way, he's saying that Donald Trump is not coordinating with him or his office. And, my question would be, okay, J.B. Pritzker, why would Donald Trump do that? Why would Donald Trump coordinate with your office? Because you know darn right and well that you will do anything to stop the president from bringing in the National Guard to curb the crime in your state and in your city of Chicago. And so Trump knows that Pritzker is simply going to file lawsuits. So why exactly would he coordinate with his office? And by the way, Pritzker has also been openly hostile to the president. Not exactly welcoming to a phone call. This is from the Associated Press, but the Trump administration has not committed to any specifics on the date. Vice President JD Vance telling reporters Wednesday there are no immediate plans to deploy to Chicago, while Donald Trump said Tuesday the administration was going in without specifying a timetable, muddying, they say, the waters on if and when a potential deployment would occur. Now, President Trump was asked about all of this on Wednesday, and this is part of what the president said in the Oval Office.
Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. You're not reporting any crime because there is none. They said crime is down 87%, and I said, no, it's not. It's down 100%. We have a great thing going. I could do that with Chicago. We could do that with New York. We could do it with Los Angeles. So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago or do we go to a place like New Orleans where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana. And you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks. Easier than D.C. But we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us to go into Chicago if we don't have the support of some of these politicians. But I'll tell you who is supporting us, the people of Chicago. And I sort of want them to let it be known. They have incompetent people.
Yeah, and that is Donald Trump, of course. And, a lot of these statements that the president is making, a lot of the statements that J.B. Pritzker is making, a lot of these are repetitive, and a lot of these are, of course, the same message. But the point is that as the rhetoric continues to escalate, so does the possibility of Donald Trump sending the National Guard into Chicago. But that is the rub, right? I mean, why are we even bothering with Chicago? It is just going to lead to a bunch of lawsuits and a bunch of drama. And so perhaps, and I've been saying this really since day one, perhaps working within states where those efforts would be more appreciated. I mean, I want you to think about that. I mean, if the mayor of, and I don't know who the mayor is of New Orleans, but if the governor of New Orleans wants to bring in Donald Trump, it doesn't even maybe have to be for the whole city, but maybe just, certain areas of that city where the crime is really bad, where you do have that rush of National Guard to get everything in place to set up that area, that region for success, because the people need it. One of the things that I've always found interesting when you talk about crime is that you go into an area and you see, okay, so this is crime-ridden. Well, who is committing the crime? And you find out that the vast majority of the crime is actually committed by, relatively speaking, few people. So you take on those few people and you throw them in. Well, you got to charge them. We got to arrest them. So you arrest them, then you charge them, then you give them the trial, then you put them in prison. That is what you're supposed to do. The left is going to start screaming, oh, you can't incarcerate people. You can't send people to jail. And it's like hell we can't. Because grown adults know the difference between right and wrong. Grown adults understand that if they are committing crimes, they could go to jail. Yeah, even if you are in a city that is run by Democrats. But you see, right now, the criminals are not scared of the Democrats. The criminals are not scared of the police. And that's why you do see cities like New Orleans and Chicago and Memphis, Tennessee. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. We have, part of that problem is in Nashville as well. So for me, I'm looking at all of this and I'm thinking, okay, so if Trump doesn't want the headache of dealing with J.B. Pritzker, here's the deal. Mission accomplished as it deals with the likes of Chicago, because the president has already proven that Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson are embracing crime. They're not embracing the safety of the citizens of Chicago or Illinois. And so he's already proven what he needed to prove. So now if I'm Donald Trump, I'm going to come out. Here's what I would do if I'm Donald Trump. I come out with a major announcement and I say, you know what? I feel sorry for the people of Chicago, but their governor has made the decision that he doesn't want the help of the federal government or the National Guard. So next weekend, when we see, 8, 9, 10, 12 people murdered, and we have 50 or 60 people shot, and that happens weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend, just know that I was here, Donald Trump would say, I was here trying to fix the problem. And the Democrats that you voted for wouldn't let me do it. So there is blood on their hands. That's what Donald Trump needs to do. I mean, I feel like he's already won, whether or not he goes into Chicago or not. He's already won because he has exposed them. He backed them into a corner and he exposed them to the point now where, the Democrats, and I'm going to get into this here in a little bit in more detail, but the Democrats are clearly, based on their reactions to Donald Trump, they are the party of illegal immigration, criminals, and chaos. Congratulations, J.B. Pritzker. Here in Tennessee, this came out after yesterday, after I got off the air in Nashville. But here in Tennessee, a congressman by the name of Andy Ogles has asked now that President Trump look to bring the National Guard into the state of Tennessee, not only in Memphis, but also in Nashville, accusing Nashville's mayor, a guy by the name of Freddie O'Connell, of transitioning Nashville into an outpost for international gangs. Yeah. Here's what he said to our afternoon show host, Matt Murphy, on WTN Radio.
You have a right to walk down the street and not get mugged. You have a right to go to the store and not get raped. And that's what's occurring all over this country because you have these woke, radical mayors who've turned their citizens and their communities into victims. And enough is enough. Trump, if you can clean up Washington, D.C., which had one of the highest crime rates in the country, except for maybe Memphis and Louisiana and New Orleans, it can be done all over this country.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love what the congressman is saying. But part of the problem, of course, is that pesky Constitution. The 10th Amendment does come into play here. Now, remember, and we've talked about this before, and I'm sure that Gary and Eric have as well, but the 10th Amendment, where the president is justified to federalize the National Guard in these states. What are the conditions that you can do that? Well, to repel an invasion, that's number one. And I suppose, and trust me when I say, friends, I am no attorney. But 10th Amendment says you can nationalize or federalize the National Guard to repel an invasion. I suppose if you wanted to turn that into, we have a bunch of illegal aliens, you know, in the city of Chicago or the city of Memphis, whatever, maybe that would be a justification to federalize. To suppress a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against federal authority, that's another one of those instances where the president could federalize the National Guard. When the president, they say, is the Constitution says, when the president is unable to execute federal laws within regular forces. So if we see rampant crime in these cities, does that give the president justification to federalize the National Guard? That is up to the lawyers. They say that he could also use the Insurrection Act to suppress insurrections, rebellions, or domestic violence that obstructs federal law or deprives citizens of constitutional rights. And so the lawyers, you know, they'll be able to, and Trump's lawyers, and I guarantee you they're already doing it. If Donald Trump already has people in place and they're already, you know, basically ready to go at a moment's notice, they've already gone through all of these legal arguments. They've already gone through whatever legal justification Donald Trump will utilize to go into the city of Chicago. They've already figured out that legal argument. Andy Ogles, the congressman, was asked about the 10th Amendment and did he have concerns about the 10th Amendment being violated.
If this is going to happen, how do we do it and honor and protect the Constitution of the United States? How do we protect and honor the Constitution? So look, you know, a benevolent king is only as benevolent as long as he wants to be. So how do we make sure that we don't set a precedent that could literally be weaponized against us in the future? Those are important conversations that have to be had if the president decides to take action outside of Washington, D.C., which is its own unique island in the middle of, you know, the United States of America, if you will. But that being said, these mayors need to understand and recognize is that you have a proactive president of the United States. He is an out-of-the-box thinker. And if there is a legal way for him to move forward, he will. And quite frankly, I support that as long as it can be done legally, that we honor and protect the Constitution. Mm-hmm. It's not a living, breathing document. 10th Amendment means something. But that being said, some of these streets across our country are not safe.
Well, and that's certainly true. So there is still a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss as well. And we'll continue to do it here on Red Eye Radio. By the way, the phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. My text line is open as well, 615-737-9986. And by the way, follow me on X. I just posted something absolutely hilarious at Dan Mandis Show. It is a video. It's, you know, AI, but it's a video of Gavin Newsom because, you know, they're trolling each other on the socials. And it is a video. You've got to see it to believe it. It is a video of Gavin Newsom in something just short of a Speedo. And he is in a very girl-like fashion hitting a Donald Trump boxing pad hanging down from, you know, the rafters. And it's very funny because it makes Gavin Newsom look just incredibly weak. It is incredibly funny. You've got to go see it at Dan Mandis Show on X, and we'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Did you know that up to half of all major engine failures are due to poor cooling system maintenance? That's a lot of downtime and can cost drivers big. You expect a lot from your engine, which is why the cooling system must be a part of your maintenance routine. Here's a tip to keep your cooling system in shape and your engine running smooth. Inspect your radiator, belts, and hoses for potential failures and deterioration, especially ahead of winter. Check the condition of your coolant to ensure it's at the optimum freeze point. Inadequate freeze protection levels can result in cracking of lines or passages. If you find insufficient freeze point levels or any wear and tear, have these issues repaired by technicians you can trust.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. I'd made mention that the president is thinking about sending the National Guard into, a city like New Orleans, where there is a lot of crime. You've got a governor that respects the president and apparently has invited the president to bring in the National Guard into his state, or at least is open to the idea. And I'd made mention that I actually didn't know who the mayor of New Orleans is, and so on Twitter, a guy named Paul sent me a press release regarding the New Orleans mayor, a woman by the name of Latoya Cantrell, where she and a former New Orleans Police Department officer have just been apparently indicted for fraud and obstruction of justice. So there you go. Why is it, it's so interesting, all of these, Democrat-run mayors, and you see these stories all the time where it is just, it's corrupt as all get out. And you see this time and again. I mean, let's go Brandon Johnson, what I'm calling the mayor of Chicago. Let's go Brandon Johnson. And I talked yesterday, in fact, it's come up off and on throughout the program here in the last couple of days as I fill in for Gary and Eric, that Chicago is one of the most, corrupt cities in America. And so you always see the same thing, right? In these Democrat-run cities where you have the very corrupt mayors and all of the layers of bureaucracy that are going on inside of these cities. I've spoken about not only the corruption in the city of Chicago, but also, and this goes back, by the way, not just, let's go Brandon Johnson, the mayor currently. This goes back to several mayors, as a matter of fact. And Chicago has long been corrupt, and, everybody knows that. But when you look at how the mayor is always asking for, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I've already spoken about it, but when the mayor is perpetually talking about wanting funds for affordable housing, well, that is a great way for them to launder money. I mean, that's how they do it. That's how they launder money, is you get a whole bunch of money from, grants, the federal government, whatever it is, and then it goes into, this just layers and layers of accounts and bureaucracy and organizations and nonprofits. And ultimately what happens is that money ends up going into some black hole somewhere. Nobody really knows where the hell it goes. So that's why you see these cities, and there's a lot of commonalities. And the biggest one or two is Democrats and corruption.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. By the way, if you don't know by now, I'm a radio host in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm the morning show host, and that program runs 6 to 10 Eastern Time. It is on all the streaming platforms. We are also on YouTube and Facebook. If you like to watch radio talk shows in action, you can see all of us working and talking to our heart's desire. The text line, 615-737-9986. So one of the things, real quickly, and then I'm going to get your phone calls. And again, lines are open at 866-90 Red Eye. CNN is now reporting that ICE is going to possibly go in and try to do some raids, of course. And so the thinking is that if ICE goes in and that causes the reaction that we saw in Los Angeles, well, then that would give the president justification to then send in the National Guard. Because remember, we were talking about the instances in which the president would be able to legally justify using the National Guard. And we talked about how, number 3, when the president is unable to execute federal laws with regular forces, that allows him then to use the National Guard. So if he sends in ICE, kind of like he did in Los Angeles, although that was deemed as illegal, but then he would, according to Trump, have the justification to use the National Guard. We'll have to see what happens. This really is what I would say. It is a chess game between the president and also some of these leaders in these Democrat-run cities. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. Want to say hello to Jason calling from Nashville. And Jason, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, Danny, I listen to you every day. But no, I get frustrated at the city, the Democrat cities, because, Trump's not doing anything that they couldn't do themselves. They just refuse to. And that's my problem with all of this. I tell people every day when this conversation comes up, it's like, what? Trump's not doing anything that the mayor couldn't do or the police department couldn't do. They just won't.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there is, Jason, if I may, and then I'll let you go. But, one of the things that is so astounding about today's Democrat Party is that they like to make excuses for criminals. I don't know if you folks were listening last night in the very last hour of the program, about 15 minutes before the end. A guy called in and he was giving every excuse in the book as to why criminals do what they do. Oh, yeah. It was the most ridiculous conversation ever because he was making all kinds of excuses as to why criminals do what they do. And it's like, dude, no matter what your situation is, you know the law. And if you're going to break the law, then you are going to suffer the consequences unless you're in one of these Democrat-run cities. And I got to tell you, and I've got some information coming up here in a little bit that is going to show that the Democrat Party is just not doing well. And I think people are recognizing that they are very much, Jason, go ahead, pro-criminal.
Oh, they absolutely. They got rid of me, Dan. I mean, we both live in Nashville or around now. I was born and raised in Nashville, lived here my whole life. But, I made up my mind about 10 years ago that I have to work in Nashville, but I don't have to live here. So I was like a lot of people. I moved about an hour away. My kids wasn't going to go to those schools. It was just it was just better elsewhere. I don't know.
What's interesting, Jason, is that Nashville overall, I think, and I don't want to get too local on a national show, but, Nashville, when you compare it to Memphis, I mean, Memphis is just horrible. I mean, you want to talk about a city that is on the top of every list you don't want to be on top of. That is Memphis. But Nashville, there's a lot of good parts to Nashville, but there's a lot of really bad parts as well. And obviously, Jason, I'm like you. If you listen to my show, you know that I live well outside of the city of Nashville, and I do appreciate the call and the fact that you listen every morning on Super Talk 99.7. Yeah, I got to tell you, that call last night, and I shouldn't refer back to it, but it was interesting because, number one, when the guy talked to the screener, he told the screener he was going to say something completely different So he lies to the screener. That is always an indication that this is going to be somebody who is, going to come in with some fire, whatever. And he did. But I think he had some interesting points that I feel like I was able to, volley right back at him. But one of the things that he said was that criminals, the reason they do crime is because of poverty. And I dismiss that outright, because every single person who is impoverished does not go off and lead and go to a life of crime. They just don't. There's a lot of people who were poor once that did not go to a life of crime, did not turn to a life of crime. And instead, what they did was they learned a skill. They learned something. They went to school. They went to a trade school. That's what you should do, instead of just making excuses for criminals, which is what this guy was doing last night. And one of the things that I took away from that call was that he also said, because I feel like I was, having a decent conversation with the guy, but it got a little heated, whatever. That's talk radio. But then he said, I thought that Republicans and conservatives didn't like police states. Talking about Chicago, talking about Washington, D.C., talking about Memphis and, the police going in there. And my comment back to him was, listen, if it's a situation where the police are going in and they're making sure that the laws are not being broken and that people are safe and that the people of those towns can actually go outside like what they are experiencing right now in Washington, D.C., if you want to call that a police state, I don't believe that that is a police state, but this is what the Democrats are going to do, is they just keep ratcheting up the rhetoric. Because if you are all about freedom, if you're a conservative and you're all about freedom, that's actually what Donald Trump is providing to the people of Washington, D.C. That's what Donald Trump wants to provide to the people of Chicago, to the people of Memphis, maybe to the people of New Orleans. Doing what should be done in the first place is not a police state. If Donald Trump is sending the National Guard into these areas because the local police have been defunded or they can't find the number of police officers that they need. I mean, we have that problem here in Nashville. I mean, every time I do an interview with the local police folks, they're always down at least 100 officers in the city of Nashville. And there's police officer shortages all around the country. And you know that the local police, the local cops are looking at all of this and, they're wishing that the local laws would allow them to, and the local politicians and the local, district attorneys would allow them to do their jobs. I mean, do you think the local police, here's a question that I would have for you. Do you think that the local police, because I hear from cops all the time, whether it's on Red Eye Radio, whether it's doing, fill-in appearances on, any number of stations across the country, certainly in Nashville, where I'm from, I hear from police all the time. They want to do their jobs. Do you know how sick and tired the cops are of arresting the same people over and over and over again? It's got to be infuriating. Because these cops, they arrest these guys, and then no charges will be filed because they know that the local DA is not going to prosecute somebody who just stole $999 worth of stuff. You know what I mean? I was interviewing a guy named John Rose, who a lot of you folks probably don't know, but he is a congressman in Middle Tennessee. He is running to be the governor for the state of Tennessee. And he said something that we all know, but it's always good to have that reminder. But do you know that he said in Memphis, which is, I'm sorry, but it's a crap hole. I've said that before. I don't know why I apologize. It's really, calling Memphis a crap hole, it's not an insult. It's really an adjective. But the congressman said that in Memphis, the same 600 people are the ones committing all the crimes. So imagine that. And I don't know what the population is in Memphis. It's declining all the time, by the way. But the same 600 people. So imagine if you started charging them and jailing them, how much better Memphis would be, because you've got the dirtbags and you've put them in jail. Because here's the thing, and we see this all the time. I mean, I talk to police officers all the time. And they don't enjoy arresting the same people over and over. And they'll also tell you that when you're a cop and wherever you're stationed, and you see a 13-year-old who's doing bad stuff, and you see that the parents don't give a crap, the neighborhood doesn't care, the community doesn't care, the cops can't do anything because, you know, the local judges aren't going to charge a 13 or a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. And so as these little criminals grow up to be adult criminals, these police officers, they'll tell you, oh, yeah, I've been patrolling this neighborhood for 20 years. And I saw little Johnny, and little Johnny was 12, 13 years old, and he was shoplifting. By the time he was 16, he was carjacking. Nobody did anything. Nobody did anything when he was stealing stuff and vandalizing. Nobody did anything. Nobody did anything when he was carjacking. So then by the time of 19 or 20 years old, he's murdering people. Now you got dead people, and Johnny's got to go away for life. And if they had only intervened, if the law had only intervened when he was a younger man, perhaps, just maybe, he would have learned a respect for the law. Because Johnny doesn't have a dad. Johnny didn't go to school. They may have graduated him, but he wasn't going to school, and he certainly wasn't learning anything. And so when we let these younger criminals, these kids that are committing crimes, and we really don't do anything, we're not being proactive in trying to teach them how to be respectable, how to respect the laws. It's a cultural problem. And that's why when, you know, we have people that call up and they're making excuses for these criminals and, poverty leads to criminality. BS. You know what leads to criminality? Fatherless households. You know what leads to criminality? A community that doesn't give a crap. That's what leads to criminals on the street. And so those cops will tell you, yeah, I knew Johnny at the age of 12 years old when he was shoplifting. Then 15 years old, and he was robbing. And then 17 years old, he's carjacking. And then 19 years old, assault and battery, until finally he killed somebody. And now he's in jail for life. And, you know, I remember one great conversation with a cop. And he said that he always remembered, you know, this one person. He knew him since the age of 12, and he was saddened to see him gunned down at the age of 28 after, you know, a shortened lifetime of crime. And he told me, and he'd tell you, that if the community and the law had intervened at the age of 12, Johnny could have ultimately ended up being a contributing member to society. But nobody cared. And he chose to take the path that he chose, which led ultimately to his death. And that's why cops will tell you that it is heartbreaking to do what they do, because they see so much lost potential. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric will return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. The text line that I use for my local show is also up at 615-737-9986. Getting a lot of great texts again this morning from all over the country. Always appreciate that. 615-737-9986. All right, coming up, because I told you we've got a lot to do tonight. There's a lot of news regarding the Jeffrey Epstein saga. We are going to talk about that. We've got a lot going on with illegal immigration as well. We've got some great audio from Tom Homan. That is also straight ahead. And a bunch of stories regarding where Donald Trump is going to go next and what is going on with the Democrats and what exactly is it that the Democrats believe. We've got some new information on just how dire these times are for the Democrats. It is all straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Phone number is 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. And I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 89.7 WTN. I use the text line that I'm using now. So if you want to text the radio program when I'm here, 615-737-9986. There is a lot going on. I spent the first hour of the broadcast, if you're just joining us, talking about what is going on in Chicago, what could be going on in Chicago in the very near future. Apparently, President Trump already has some people in Chicago kind of planning things out. That's what CNN is reporting. I really don't know. But what I do know is that there is a very big debate that is going on across America as to what Donald Trump should do and, you know, go into Chicago or, as the president said earlier on Wednesday, where the president said he's considering maybe going into New Orleans. So there's other news, though, that I want to get to very quickly. Then I'm going to be getting to your calls at the phone number is 866-90 Red Eye. The vice president, we all know what happened in Minnesota last week. The mass shooting, trans person, a guy pretending to be a girl. I'm not going to play the game, but he didn't walk into that church, but fired from the outside, killing two kids. JD Vance, the vice president, was in Minneapolis, and he had some great things to say. He went to go visit the families of those two kids that were tragically killed. Also, there's another family who is, I think it's a daughter, who is fighting for survival. JD Vance went to go meet the families, and this is part of what he had to say. It's some great commentary, some great comments from Vance, who more than likely will be running for the presidency in 2028. But listen to all this.
I have never had a day that will stay with me like this day did, because I really felt like these parents, in the midst of the worst grief of their entire lives, they opened up their lives and they opened up their hearts and they made me part of it. So I'd ask a couple of things, straight from the parents and straight from the families to my fellow Americans. First of all, while two kids lost their lives, there's still one kid that's in very serious condition, and every single family, the family of Lydia, who luckily recovered, but we visited her in the hospital, the family of the two who died, Harper and Fletcher, all three of those families said, please say a prayer. So to my fellow Americans, if you're the praying type, say a prayer for this innocent girl who's actually in surgery right now, that the swelling will go down, that she will be okay, because she's still in a fight for her life, and every single family to a person is desperate that the death toll, which currently is at 2, stays at 2. And I think if you're a praying type, you ought to say a prayer for this innocent young girl.
You know, one of the things, and I like what Vice President Vance is saying for a number of different reasons. I think one of the things that the Democrats keep doing, and I'm going to get into this in more detail later on, but one of the things the Democrats keep doing is they can't help themselves. they say the most gosh-awful things. And so in the days following the shooting in Minneapolis, they kept talking about the lies of thoughts and prayers. The lie of thoughts and prayers from, Jen Psaki to all of these other Democrats. I think Gavin Newsom may have said something. I don't know. I remember Jen Psaki and a few others. And they spoke about, with such vile contempt, the notion that prayers would be said for the families of these children and for the children that were shot and killed and the children that were injured. And the whole point of the Democrats in attacking this notion of thoughts and prayers is that is something that the Republicans say because, and I'm going to quote here, they're not going to do anything else. Because, of course, we all know that the Democrats want to ultimately disarm America. But in the process, they insulted every Christian in America by basically dismissing the impact of prayer. And so in those moments, we had all of these Christians going to social media and saying, no, thoughts and prayers, it's not a lie. They actually work. And it's not something where thoughts and prayers, and so we're not going to do anything else. Republicans have done a lot to try to curb gun violence. And they continue to do a lot to try to curb gun violence and protect kids. I mean, we've gone through this 1,000 times, so I don't feel like I want to go through it again. But, what do Republicans advocate for? Republicans advocate for fortifying schools. Republicans advocate for keeping an eye on mental illness and trying to help those who are mentally ill. Republicans have advocated for armed teachers, armed SROs. In other words, there's a lot of things that Republicans have suggested that have been proven to save lives. And I do believe that thoughts and prayers, I do believe that they do save lives. And I could give two you-know-whats if Democrats don't believe in thoughts and prayers. But the point is that I love that JD Vance is talking about going to speak to the parents, going to talk to the kids, and relaying their message that they would like thoughts and prayers. And I would like to see the Democrats go up to those students, go up to those parents, and say that those thoughts and prayers that they requested are a lie. I would love to see them try that. Because that's ultimately what they did. They insulted every Christian in America. Because they just can't help themselves. Here's more from JD Vance.
The second thing that I'd say is, look, I'm speaking to my fellow Americans who are parents in particular. There is nothing that you can say that can take away the grief that these parents are dealing with. There is no word that can possibly describe the feeling or the emotion or the heartbreak. One of the ways that I'm going to try to honor these parents and the children that they lost is by being a better dad and hugging my kids tight tonight and making sure that they know that their dad loves them, because there are two families who are not going to get that opportunity ever again. And if you do have kids, if you're lucky enough to have a son or a daughter, make sure that they know that they love you. Make sure that you hug your kids tight, because there are families in Minneapolis who won't be able to do that ever again.
I love that. JD Vance, what great, great, great words of advice. And I mean, I know that although my kids are grown, I would certainly take that advice if your kids are adults or if you have small ones. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. 866-907-3339. That is where we find Ernesto in Nashville on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Ernesto.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Mandis?
I'm all right, man. What's going on?
Hey, I'm a long-time listener of this station, and tonight you got me fired up talking about violence, crime in big cities and stuff like that. And I want to chime in on, some of the points you made about President Trump going there, using the National Guard. And I think Nashville's about to be affected with that.
Yeah. Maybe. And I know that one of the things that I spoke about in the last hour that got a lot of people fired up, and I can certainly tell on the text line at 615-737-9986, is this notion that police officers, and this is a big part of what I said in the last hour, in case you missed it, police officers, they hate the fact that they see these kids at 12 or 13 years old and they are shoplifting, no charges, 14, 15, 16-year-old, they graduate to, vandalism, 17, 18, 19, robbery. As they get older, armed robbery, carjacking, eventually murder. And there's so many ways that you can save a child by simply either pressing charges, make them understand that a law is a law that needs to be followed. But if they don't suffer any kind of consequences along the way, then there's only one place to go. And that is ultimately either, hate to say it, but jail, prison, or death. But there's a lot of ways to save kids along the way.
You're exactly right. My son is grown just like yours is. My son's he's a probation officer in Chattanooga, and he uses his philosophy in helping a lot of those young adults in a program called Restoration, and he's doing a good job down there. It was a time when they was trying to demilitarize, defund the police. And he told me, he said, Dad, I don't want to do this job anymore. And I told him, no, you stick with it. You in 4 years of college to become it, and he loves it. But his probationees really chime in to getting restored. We don't have as many adolescent programs that's being effective, in this day and age for youngsters, especially little millennials.
Well, Ernesto, let me ask you. Your son is a probation officer, so so he is seeing all of these things. And what has he said, or what have you experienced, where we see these kids growing up, and we know that they're going in the wrong direction? Oftentimes, these parents are not engaged. How do you save these kids?
Okay. Local programs in Chattanooga, he's a volunteer, and he's helping in every capacity as possible. Some of these kids don't have parents, so he's trying to use a community setting. Who's closest to guide this kid who doesn't have a parent, who doesn't have both parents, a grandmother or something like that. And also at the school, he's working with the schools to implement programs where, kids are being checked up on. Because there's a lot of gang violence sometimes in schools, and if they pick that route, it's going to be tough if you don't have a community helping. It's going to be a big community effort, just like you mentioned earlier. Without the community, it's going to be tough. But he's facing it, and he's dealing with it, and he's consistent with his discipline. You mentioned it earlier. You said discipline at a young age equals success.
How do you instill those values, instill those values in a kid who doesn't have parents? Like, how do you get that through their head? Because, when you're 12, 13, 14, I was rebellious at that age. How do you get those values into a kid that doesn't want to listen?
Okay. Learning your culture and communicating. You cannot be an introvert and reach these kids. Sometimes you have to tolerate some profanity. You might have to use a little profanity to communicate with them. But once you build that rapport, that's the respect they're going to need, and then they open up to you. And once they open up to you, bit by bit, you could save at least one. If you save one, you've done a great job. It's just a lot of them has had so much hurt in their life. Some of them don't want to share it. But once you establish rapport, you can't avoid them, can't be scared of them. That's the key right there.
When you talk about these kids and you talk about these neighborhoods and you talk about the challenges that we see in these communities, I know you mentioned something about how it's difficult for these communities to become engaged. I'm not a big fan of, Hillary Clinton, it takes a village. But I do actually understand the concept where the community, if they see a kid going off track, what can they do if the kid doesn't have any parents, or at least a parent that doesn't care?
Okay. one-on-one communication, pulling the kid to the side, because some people are just so scared to approach a kid that has nobody. The isolated ones, sometimes they just need somebody to, break the ice and start the conversation. What's going on? Stuff like that. It's tough, but you can't be scared. Every once in a while, it depends on what school you're in. And if you walk up to a kid that's very, very angry, he might rebel at first, but if you pluck at him a little bit, he will open up eventually. You can send cards, you can use other people to communicate with him, so they know you really care about him. It's tough, but it's doable.
I got to ask, Ernesto. I got to ask. I think it's amazing that you raised a son that is a probation officer, and so you obviously know from where you speak about communicating with kids, because you again clearly raised a kid into a great adult. You have a secret as to how you did that? I mean, what advice could you give to some other parent?
Okay. Tolerating words like "shut up," "you don't know what you're talking about, Dad," and stuff like that. The way I broke my son was I took him to the magistrate of a jail, and I asked him to pull out the petition books. The magistrate was a friend of mine. He gave my son the book, and I told my son to read all the ways a parent can get a petition filed on a kid, and he had to read it in a jail cell. I left the jail. I came back in an hour, assisted discipline, and then you process it with them. Don't just discipline them and then don't process it. You process. And after the process, that's where the growth comes. And he sees his dad treating all the other kids in the community the same way. For a kid who doesn't have a dad, he's going to reach out to somebody in the community that really cares about him. And that's how you're going to save him.
Ernesto, great call, and clearly you're doing something right, and give your son our regards, and he is truly doing God's work, and we got to run. Time for a break. It is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
The IFTA tax program redistributes tax revenue to states based on your actual miles run. Thus, the truly cheapest fuel can only be found if you subtract federal and state taxes and state surcharges from the pump price to compare. The strategy means that you buy without regard for whether you are paying more at the pump in taxes. IFTA also considers state surcharges, which complicates the fuel buying strategy. Indiana, Kentucky, and Virginia have per-gallon surcharges. Connecticut, Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, and Oregon have per-mile surcharges. While some owner-operators buy only enough fuel to get through surcharge states, this practice can backfire, depending on the actual cost of the fuel in each state. When comparing fuel prices, always remember, pump pride minus taxes equals the real fuel cost. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. And that is where I'm trying to, there we go. I'm going to put Sean on there. Hey, Sean, go ahead.
My man, I've been waiting a long time for this. So you are, you're near Nashville, right?
Yes.
So a good friend of mine lives in Brentwood.
Very good.
Brilliant area. So I'm from Cincinnati, and you talked a lot about law enforcement and effects on people recidivating with their crime, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. People who continue to commit crimes if they don't get any consequences.
Yeah, it comes down to judges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no amount of police or law enforcement or National Guard will change that ever, right?
I think it depends on what the judges are allowed to sentence these folks to. You know, if somebody is, because judges have options, and if the judges are too lenient, then the kids are not going to learn to fear the judges, and that's what you need. You need the kids. Hey, Sean, hold on one sec, guys. Put Sean on hold. I want to continue this conversation on the other side. Sean, by the way, calling from Cincinnati. Sean, we'll come back to you here in a bit.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. The text line that I use for my local show in Nashville, Tennessee, also available to us this evening at 615-737-9986. I'm going to get back to my conversation with Sean from Cincinnati. And Sean, I forget where we left off, but you're talking about, because I was talking about, we need to be tougher on kids. If they show signs of trouble, we need to be more proactive in giving them tougher sentencing to teach them that it's not good to break the law, because if they don't suffer consequences, then they just keep escalating the bad behavior. Go ahead.
Well, with that preface, I would say we need to catch them before they start breaking the law. But the point that I was making was judges are elected by the people that vote, obviously, for those just new to the Republic. So in cities like Cincinnati, I live in the suburbs of Cincinnati. So in the city of Cincinnati, we elect liberal Democratic judges that don't sentence. Mm-hmm. I think that's the point you're making here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what is the solution? Because we can't send the National Guard into every city in the United States. And I feel like this is the push that's coming. And that's not in the United States of America. So that's like a stop. Like, I think it should be for all Americans, a stop, period, end.
Okay, so
have troops in streets in the United States, period.
All right, so
no go.
All right, hold on, Sean. So we're going through a few things. So number one is, as far as local judges go, they're elected. They're elected by the community. It depends on where you are, but you're right. In my opinion, there's a number of things. Number one, we do need judges. If you see a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid that comes into your courtroom, there needs to be programs put in place where you teach these kids some tough love. You know, I'm not saying that if a kid is shoplifting, that we need to give him 5 years. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that there needs to be programs. There needs to be some accountability, because that's the only way that these kids are not going to end up, being carjackers or murderers. Because
can I make a side point? Can I make
go
a
ahead.
side point? So this might be out in left field, but I think it's valid. With the laxing of marijuana laws and the obvious skewing of these types of crimes that you're talking about to young African-American males, which those are the people largely, like percentage-wise of the population of people in jail for minor drug crimes. Do you think that maybe marijuana laws laxing and more fathers in homes in black communities might fix this problem, because we're not, again, prosecuting a ridiculous ban on marijuana that we did for 40 years.
Here's what I would say, Sean, is and I don't know if you're familiar with my program. I don't know if you've ever heard me before, but
that's actually first time. I'm the 700 WW guy.
Oh, very good.
I just happened to be listening on my way home and trucking Bozo, and
that is 700 WLW. That is a great radio station. So
between you and me, Willie Cunningham is my uncle.
Oh, really?
No joke. Yeah. Carry on.
No kidding.
I didn't even say that.
All right. Very good.
Anyway, here we go.
Anyway, so here, number one is the most important thing that you said is fathers. Mm-hmm. Fathers in the household and an intact family are incredibly important to a young boy growing up, because that is how a young man is to learn respect, is through a father, an authority figure. So that's number one. Number two is, I think you and I are going to disagree on the National Guard on city streets. And here's why. Because if local authorities, for whatever reason, will not keep the law, will not enforce the laws, and they allow insanity to happen. And you know, Sean, what I'm talking about. I mean,
hold on. If a governor calls for it.
Yes, there. Okay,
that's the Constitution. It
is.
Lies the rub.
It is, and I said that in the first hour. But here's the thing: there are ways, and Donald Trump is testing this, by the way. So you're right.
Ways.
Hold on. The 10th Amendment in the Constitution does allow for instances where a president can send in a National Guard, usurping the authority of the governor. He just needs the right legal authority. Now, I know, but listen, Trump lost that case in Los Angeles, so he's going to have to deal with that. So if and when he ends up going into Chicago, he's got to have the proper legal authority to do that. And that's the Constitution.
Hold on.
Yes.
Are we? I don't want to give Donald Trump that kind of authority. He's not George Washington crossing the Potomac. He's not.
No, but Sean, all right, we got to drop the call. Hold on. We got to drop the call. You cursed. No. You cursed. Yeah. You dropped the F-bomb.
My bad.
All right. So all I'm going to say is this, because I got a lot of people that want to talk, is that Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. Whether or not you like him or not is separate from the fact that he's got a job to do. And if local states and local authorities, if governors and mayors and city councils and district attorneys, if they refuse to do their jobs and cities ultimately end up in decay and ruin because of the crime, then Donald Trump is trying to make the case that if you bring a whole bunch of National Guard into a city and take care of the problem, then they can keep the peace. You're right. We can't send National Guard troops into every single American city. We simply can't do that. But you send a bunch in, like a bunch of commandos, they go in and they get the peace and they're able to keep the peace. And you put a bunch of these bad guys in jail. I don't know if you're listening to me earlier, Sean, but in Memphis, you know, the research shows that only 600 people are responsible for the vast majority of the crime in Memphis. So you send in the National Guard, you make some arrests, you work with the local authorities, you get the governor on your side, you get the mayor on your side, you get the district attorney on your side, and you figure out a way to fix the problem. Sean, in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump has fixed the problem. So despite the fact that you clearly don't like him, I'm not yelling at you, Sean, you seem like a good guy, but despite the fact that the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of Washington, D.C., did not want Trump to bring in the National Guard. He is constitutionally allowed to do it there in Washington, D.C. He fixed the problem. Now, your commentary about Donald Trump tells me that your problem with the president is what is leading you to believe that he should not send in the National Guard into Cincinnati, where you are, or any other place. I think it's because you don't like Donald Trump, and not because, in my opinion, you're not thinking rationally. And I just told you, there are instances, there are legal ways where the president, and he's testing his authority. I will tell you that. The president is testing his authority. But if he can figure out a way to legally send in the National Guard so that these great American cities, once great American cities, ultimately can make some sort of a comeback, that is for all America. And that is important. Dude, you live in Cincinnati. As you know, there was a beatdown of a couple of innocent people in Cincinnati just a few weeks ago. Not a good look for the state of Cincinnati, or the city of Cincinnati. Not a good look for Ohio. And Cincinnati, I've been there a number of times. It is a great, great city. But if defunded police departments are not able to keep the peace, and innocent people are getting beaten to an inch of their lives for no reason at all, like that poor woman Harley in Cincinnati, and all she was trying to do was protect another man who was getting beaten to a pulp, then those kind of people need to be in prison. And I don't care if it's the National Guard who catches them, or local authorities, or a combination of the two in a coordinated effort. But the American people want to live in peace. And it's interesting because one of the things, and had you not cursed, I would have brought you back on, but one of the things that I think Donald Trump is doing, and I've said this many times now, so I'm sorry if you're going to eye roll at me, but, you know, in places like Cincinnati, in places like Washington, D.C., in places like Chicago, the majority of those people that are being murdered are black. And so as people will continuously call Donald Trump a racist, that racist is saving black lives in Washington, D.C., and he wants to do that everywhere. And so I don't know what your beef is with Donald Trump, but he's trying to save lives. He's trying to make cities better. The only question is, does he have the legal authority through the Constitution of the United States? And that is, of course, a very, very big question. And, Sean, I do appreciate the call, and I do appreciate the dialogue. Kevin is on Red Eye Radio. I'm sorry, guys in the studio, my mouse is broken, so I can't put Kevin on the air. So if you can put Kevin on the air line 2, that would be appreciated. Kevin in Rockville, Maryland. Hi, Kevin. Go ahead.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for taking my call, first of all. I appreciate your dissection of current events. And I just have 3 main points as it pertains to what Donald Trump is trying to do in these cities that are ruled by criminals, really. And the first is the Democrats are calling these cities, and what President Trump is doing, militarization of our cities. And my point is, currently, before the president took action, the city was already militarized, just militarized by criminals.
That's a great point, Kevin.
People were controlled by the actions of these criminals, from 6 to 10 carjackings a night, a murder every other day, people loitering and drinking in front of apartment complexes, whatever. The vast majority of Americans want that to be safe in their community. And in order to do that, you have to use authority, being the police department and, in this case, the National Guard.
Yeah.
The second point is, I think what the Democrats are more upset about is, in 1 month's time, President Trump has proven the broken windows theory correct. That if you enforce the small infractions, the bigger crimes don't occur because they start seeing police taking action for the small stuff.
Yep.
The criminals move out or they go somewhere else. So that's proof to me that the restorative justice that they've been preaching in colleges and criminal justice courses, it works for some things, but it doesn't work for everything. And my last main point would be that the Democrats always talk about after a shooting, gun violence. They're trying to redefine and change our English language. When they do that, they take the accountability away from the criminal, and they place blame on the gun and society. My belief is that their goal is to take the guns from society, because society, after all, is the subject in this situation.
Yep.
And nobody will have a gun except for criminals.
Yeah, and Kevin, you are absolutely right, and I've got to leave it there. I've got to take a break, but great points, all three of them. Appreciate it, Kevin. Please call back, 866-90-RED-EYE. We'll return next.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. It's kind of funny. We're joking, the producers and I are joking about the number of curse words that have happened over the last couple of shows here on Red Eye Radio. And the only thing, and our dump button, we've gotten every single one. But what I love is that shows that there is a level of passion for the topics and the conversation. And so while you're not supposed to curse on the radio, friends, I appreciate the passion with which we have these conversations. Got a lot more straight ahead. By the way, follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. Text me, 615-737-9986.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric return next Sunday night, Monday morning. I'm using my text line as well from my local show in Nashville, Tennessee, 615-737-9986. If you want to chime in, you can text in, and getting text messages from all across America. Thank you for that. I do host a local show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I am the morning host, and I'm on 6 to 10 Eastern. You can find us on, a live telecast, if you will, of the show on YouTube and Facebook, 997WTN.com, Rumble, and you can catch the podcast anywhere and everywhere you can get your podcasts and streaming. Okay. So the victims of Epstein spoke out today. Jeffrey Epstein. They spoke out today. And there's a lot here. So I want to give this the proper time, because I think that this is going to turn into a really intriguing conversation amongst America. Because the victims have now come out. You know, realize one of the things that's been going on with the Epstein files, and by the way, I do believe the files should be released. They need to have the proper redactions and so forth. They need to be released responsibly. But you know that Democrat Ro Khanna, and you've got Thomas Massey from Kentucky, so Democrat and Republican, they brought out all of these victims. And they're not, Jane Doe. They're not hidden. Their faces aren't hidden. They're not protecting their identity. No, what they're doing is they are coming out and they are now telling their story. As they say, they are no longer weak. They are no longer scared. They are actually really pissed off. They're pissed off at not only, obviously, Jeffrey Epstein and all of the men that did the things that they did when all of this was happening way back when. But they're also angry with the media. They're also angry with the government. They're angry with the attorneys that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to effectively get away with what he got away with. And so watching the press conference, as one after another, they came out, they told their story, they were crying, they were hugging, they were there for each other because they've been dealing with this for obviously years. And they were finally able to tell their story. And there's a reason why, and I'm going to get into all of that, but I first want to play you some audio. This is a woman named Courtney Wild. She is an Epstein survivor who had the added insult of being shut out by our own government. Listen to what she has to say.
Sometimes it's hard to believe that I had to sue the United States just to learn that my abuser was given immunity. We fought the government for 10 years to prove that the government violated our rights as crime victims and the crime victims' rights in order to protect a pedophile. We had to win the 11th Circuit Court appeals to force the government to turn over thousands of pages of emails between Jeffrey Epstein and the government. Those emails provided the proof that the government worked very hard with Jeffrey Epstein to violate our rights. Why? Why did the government work so hard to protect Jeffrey and not so hard to protect me and my other innocent friends? Why was Jeffrey so important to the government and why was I so insignificant? Why did nobody but our lawyers care before now? It seems people have only started to care because of Twitter and politics.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there, and I could do an hour on this topic. But one of the things that she's talking about is Alex Acosta. Now, we spoke about this last night. Acosta is the lawyer who negotiated the non-prosecution agreement, where Epstein was allowed to plead guilty to a single state charge. I mean, really suffering no consequences whatsoever. At the time, this Alex Acosta, he was the U.S. attorney for South Florida. So he is the one that effectively gave Epstein a sweetheart deal. And then you heard her story. I mean, they were not giving her any kinds of information whatsoever. And as far as the why were they protecting Jeffrey Epstein but not protecting her? It's because Epstein knew very powerful people. Now, one of the things that I noticed is that the ones that I saw, I didn't see all of them. There were many speakers, multiple speakers, but they all said this is not political. This is not left. This is not right. We want justice. We want the world to know our story. And Courtney Wild, she talked about how heartbreaking this has been because she not only had to deal with what she went through in that horrific ordeal, but she's been dealing with all of the other things associated with it as she became an adult.
But I would like to say this has nothing to do with politics. This is not a blue thing or a red thing. This is an everyone thing. We can all agree on this. The injustice that has happened here, multiple, over and over. Everybody that talks about this just seems to make it worse. We need transparency. It's time for us to see beyond the curtain. Why was Jeffrey Epstein so protected? Who is still being protected? And who protected them all so the world can understand how Jeffrey was able to abuse so many of us for so long?
Well, and here's the deal. Obviously, we need to ensure that this never happens again. But who is protecting Jeffrey Epstein? I think at this point, if somebody is trying to protect Jeffrey Epstein, they're also trying to protect the people that Jeffrey Epstein set up girls for. And one of the things, and we played the audio last night, you got James Comer out there. He's head of the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives. They're going to call Bill Clinton. They're going to call Hillary Clinton. They're going to call Alex Acosta, and I'm sure a lot of others as well, who were close associates of Jeffrey Epstein. This is another survivor. Her name is Jenna Lisa Jones.
I know that I was just a little kid, but sometimes I still feel like it is my fault that this happened. Being given the opportunity to speak at the United States Capitol building about something that is so important, not just to me and the women before you, but to the entire country. Together, we can finally make a change. Please recognize how important it is for transparency relating to Jeffrey Epstein. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, this does not matter. This is not about sides. You are an American, and you are a person who has chosen to serve in an elected position to stand up for those you represent who cannot always stand up for themselves. We are those people. We are the Americans that you promised to protect, and we need your help. Please, President Trump, pass this bill and help us. Make us feel like our voices are finally being heard. Thank you.
And again, very supportive of each other. The stories, of course, as you can imagine, were horrifying. I'm not getting into, some of the very specific, horrific experiences that these girls went through. I mean, if you want to find them, they're on the internet and so forth. But they were horrifying, and ultimately, they were put through really terrible, terrible experiences at a very young age. And of course, some of them spoke about how they were forced to go find other girls to, sort of get into that group. And they were paid, I guess, $200 to bring another girl in. They were afraid that they were going to be stuck in this situation forever. There was many of them that couldn't figure out how to get out of the situation. Epstein was threatening them as well. And, just like in a lot of these different kind of situations where the girls are very young, they have no one to turn to. They don't want their reputations destroyed as a teenage girl. They don't know if they should go to the police. They don't know what's going to happen. They're not telling their parents, obviously. And so they were groomed, they were bullied, they were threatened, and they were manipulated. And now they're speaking out. This particular soundbite that I'm about to play really went viral on social media. And when you hear it, you'll understand why.
And the secrecy, and stand with us in declaring that no one, no billionaires, no politicians, not world leaders, is above the law. And let me announce now, several of us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list of names.
Oh, snap.
We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details on that.
So, they are ready to go. And they've been sitting around watching the politicians, frankly, play games with this situation for a long time. And so now they do want justice. And so one of the talking points about this situation today with all of these Epstein survivors no longer, hiding. They're now out. They feel strong, and they want to take charge of this situation. They want to take charge of this story because they don't feel like the politicians are doing their job. Now, Donald Trump was asked about all of this, and this is what the president had to say following this press conference. Listen.
Mr. President, right now, there have been survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. And Thomas Massey, who is sponsoring a discharge position to get the House to vote on the release of those documents, says he doesn't think you're implicated in these files, but many of your friends and donors may be, and he says that's why the Justice Department is redacting them and slow-walking the release. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir? So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more. and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Even if you look at D.C. right now, D.C., it's a totally safe zone. It's called a safe zone. That's a term. It's a term of art. It's a safe zone because it's very safe. You can walk down the street now and nothing's going to happen. No crime, no murders, no nothing. Because we had a lot of problems with certain places, and we still do. All run by Democrats, or for the most part run by Democrats. So what they're trying to do with the Epstein hoax is get people to talk about that instead of speaking about the tremendous success like ending 7 wars. I ended 7 wars. Nobody's going to talk about because they're going to talk about the Epstein, whatever. I understand that we were subpoenaed to give files, and I understand we've given thousands of pages of files. And I know that no matter what you do, it's going to keep going. And I think it's enough because I think we should talk about the greatness of our country and the success that we're having. I think we're probably having, according to what I read, even from 2 people in this room, we're having the most successful 8 months of any president ever. And that's what I want to talk about. That's what we should be talking about, not the Epstein hoax.
When's going to make a decision on Ukraine? So, as you can tell, Donald Trump had a few things to say about it. Now, as a guy who is a supporter of Donald Trump, I appreciate what the president has to say, although I got to tell you that I just don't believe calling this a hoax was the right thing to do, especially after hearing the stories of these incredible women and what they had to endure. Now, I know what Donald Trump means, and I know what Donald Trump meant. And I also understand when he says that this whole thing is never ending because you always hear they're releasing thousands of documents and thousands of documents and thousands of documents. But the problem is that they keep like re-releasing the same documents. I mean, this latest document dump, 34,000 different documents and files and whatever. And a lot of it was stuff that we already knew. And so you got the people that really watch this, and they're saying, there's only 3% of all of this material that was released was new. And so again, as I play that audio, I'm sort of shaking my head because President Trump, I know what he means, but it just comes off really wrong. And the people on the left, the Democrats and the media, they will have a field day with this. Donald Trump is right. There's a lot to focus on that he has done that is really, really good. He's done a lot. He's got a lot to be thankful for. He's got a lot to be proud of, as a matter of fact. But the reality is that this is a story. It's not going to go away. And calling it a hoax is not going to get Donald Trump any political favors. He's done a lot of really good things. He's got to try and figure out a way. And by the way, he's the one that hired Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel, who spent years talking tough and talking big about how they know what's in the Epstein files and they're going to take care of the Epstein files. And if they were in charge, here's what they would do regarding the Epstein files, and calling everybody else out on what they should be doing with the Epstein files. They came in and they handled it really, really poorly. So they got to figure out a way to deal with this situation and somehow try to be incredibly respectful of these victims because they do deserve to be heard. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Send me a text, and that number is 615-737-9986. I want to play one more piece of audio related to the Epstein situation, and that is this piece of audio where, as the girls and one guy, but the guy I think is a support person for one of the girls, but They asked these girls, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's looks like 9 or so of these girls. And they asked, this was on a town hall panel kind of a thing on NBC, and they were asked about specifically Donald Trump.
I do have to ask, and I know, and it's just something that I think we're compelled to at this moment, with the attention on President Trump, with these questions around a pardon. Did anybody see or hear of the president himself doing anything inappropriate as it related to Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
No, you had two women, two of the women say no. And Donald Trump has said that all along. Now, what I'm trying to find, and for the life of me, friends, I cannot find it. Maybe if you're good at internet sleuthing, you can find it. I would like to find a longer cut because I'm suspicious because it cuts off so quickly. So I want to know what else was said, and for the life of me, I cannot find a longer cut anywhere. So if you happen to, be on the internet and you can find it, send it to me. I'm at, you can text me 615-737-9986, or you can email me. That email address, dan@997wtn.com. But these women say that no, Donald Trump did not do anything, I should say, anything inappropriate. So now we have to wait and see. And I got a bunch of texts earlier from my earlier monologue, people asking, okay, so when will the girls come out with their list? I don't know. Meantime, there's going to be more documents that are going to be released, and this conversation, of course, will continue. How much of a train wreck are the Democrats? That is coming up next.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you being here. So, getting a lot of feedback on the whole Jeffrey Epstein conversation. So, if you want to call in about that, you certainly are able to do that at 615, I should say. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. I do want to move on to some other topics, though, because I think that there is a lot to talk about regarding politics today. And we've gone through, Chicago, what's going to happen next. But Donald Trump apparently has now devised a plan to try to beat the communist mayor mayor wannabe in New York City. Mamdani? This is the headline from the Daily Mail. Donald Trump hatches desperate 11th hour plot to prevent communists from taking over his most beloved city, New York. Now, we could argue as to whether or not New York is Donald Trump's most beloved city, but we all know that Donald Trump and very few people outside of communists actually like Zorhan Mamdani.
We have a communist running for the mayor of New York, and I wish him well. I may have to deal with him. I mean, it's not even conceivable. It's not even conceivable that could happen, and maybe he won't win, but he won the primaries by quite a bit. Shockingly, he won the primaries. So, and you see some of the people supporting him that truly don't believe what he's espousing. So, I mean, we will meet, but nothing's going to come out of the meeting.
All right, so how is Donald Trump going to beat Zorhan Mamdani? I'll tell you in a second. But first of all, if you don't know who he is running for mayor. He won the Democrat primary in the city of New York to be the mayor. He is a communist. He wants to defund the police. He says that he would allot millions of dollars for transgender surgeries, taxpayer funded, mind you, transgender surgeries and procedures in the city of New York. He wants government-run grocery stores. He wants rent controlled on apartments. He wants to embrace the sanctuary city policies of New York. He wants to raise taxes on the wealthy. Of course, he wants to ultimately then give that money to the poor. He wants a $30 an hour minimum wage. He wants free public transit. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Well, now it would appear that Donald Trump has come up with a plan to ensure that Mamdani does not win that general election for the mayor's race. There's a whole bunch of people running. You've got Curtis Sliwa, who I believe he is running as a Republican. You have current Mayor Eric Adams, who is a Democrat, but he is running as an independent. And you have scandal-prone Andrew Cuomo, also a Democrat, but also running as an independent. So you have Sliwa, you've got Eric Adams, and you have Andrew Cuomo. So you've got three guys who are running as either Republicans or independents. And so you know what's going on, right? If you know anything about politics, you know, because the polling shows Mamdani in the lead. Well, the reason why Mamdani is in the lead is because you've got Eric Adams and you've got Sliwa and you've got Cuomo. They are splitting the other vote. So you've got Mamdani and his fans, but then you've got these other three. You take two out of the three out, and then all of that support will, theoretically anyway, end up with that last candidate. And that's what Donald Trump is supposedly trying to do. The reports are that Donald Trump is going to offer Curtis Sliwa and Eric Adams jobs in the administration. So what that does, that effectively leaves Andrew Cuomo as the lone candidate running against Mamdani. And so if the supporters for Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa naturally would gravitate towards Cuomo, then theoretically he would end up winning the election over Mamdani. And so if Trump can somehow figure out a way to lure Sliwa and Adams out of the race, that leaves Cuomo, he could actually win the race against Mamdani. Then you're going to have people that are like, well, you know, Cuomo's a Democrat. Well, yeah, but he's not a communist like Mamdani is. They say three sources with knowledge of the behind-the-scenes discussions told the publication, this was the New York Times, I believe, the administration is eager to intervene and has been considering their options for weeks. One insider claimed the administration has actually started looking into ambassadorships, which could be a good fit for Eric Adams, but noted the talks are going in different directions at this point. Now, neither Adams or Sliwa would comment on the rumors, but, I mean, this is politics 101. You know, you try to get some of these folks to drop out of a race, and so you would get their support, or you try to get people to drop out of the race, and so that your candidate does get more support. And, you know, to me, it does make all the sense in the world. And I do understand why Donald Trump would want to try to manipulate the election if he is trying to. Because both Sliwa and Adams, they have both said, we're not doing this. But, you know, you hear those things all the time. And then the next thing that you know, a candidate drops out. But if Curtis Sliwa and Eric Adams want to save New York, because in the polling of those three, Cuomo is on top. If they want to save New York from this crazed communist that is Mamdani, then they've got to do what they got to do, which would be to drop out. You know who's really mad about this? Mamdani.
I think there are many ethical issues with this news. We are talking about a mayor who was facing an indictment that was then dropped by this administration to ensure greater collaboration with the immigration directives of this administration. Now being considered for a job offer such that he would drop out of a race to represent this city because of the fact that they believe that would increase the odds of anyone being able to defeat me. Those are incredible ethical issues.
No, it's not. Is that an ethical issue? I mean, politicians, they do this stuff all the time. I mean, politics is a rough and tumble thing, right? And you always see people dropping out of races to go support another candidate or to impact an election. And this is just the way the game is played. Now, Mamdani, he's got some experience in politics. I think he's like a state legislator or something like that. But this is how the game is played. Is it unethical? I'll leave that for you to decide.
And none of this has to do with New Yorkers. None of it has to do with the welfare of this city. It all has to do with power. It all has to do with the audacity that we have here to believe that we could pick our own mayor. That we have to believe that the most pressing issues are not how to ensure that Donald Trump continues to have an ambassador in the hall, but that New Yorkers can actually afford the place that they call home.
So that is Mamdani, and he is obviously talking about this. But, it's interesting because he says, he's in it for the New Yorkers, right? But everything that he wants to do, he's so misguided. Everything that he wants to do would be a disaster for the state of New York, for the city of New York. Literally everything. I mean, I don't need to go through, once again, all of the evils of communism, or all the evils of socialism. I don't need to. And a lot of people are saying, you know what, if the city of New York is so bass-ackwards and dumb that they're going to vote this guy into the mayor's race, well, then let it burn. But I think that you need to do, and I get what Donald Trump may be trying to do, and that is if you are a skilled politician, and Donald Trump is, and Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa, perhaps they know, perhaps they don't know, I don't know, but they're behind in the polling. So could they or should they drop out to prevent Mamdani from winning this election? I mean, they've got a lot to think about. But, I would say if they're stupid enough to do something like vote this dude into office, they get what they voted for. But Mamdani has said that. He has basically campaigned on fighting Donald Trump at every turn. So for me, I totally understand why it is that Donald Trump does not want this guy into office. Mamdani would be an absolute nightmare. Meanwhile,
Democrats trying to right the ship. Party still listing to the left.
We are not giving over this country to some Timu dictator with swollen ankles who thinks that he's going to be a king.
Democrats pitching progressive ideas like packing the Supreme Court.
It is important to all of us that the courts be a check on the executive branch.
One delegate even argues that things were better during COVID.
I think we're living worse times than the times of the pandemic. It is just grueling.
I mean, isn't that incredible that you have a politician that would actually say, I don't know about you, but I lost loved ones during COVID. So how insane is that? See, the Democrats, that's the problem, is that they just sound insane. Infused with the Trump derangement syndrome, and they're going to need to get over it or their party is absolutely going to be ruined. No, I don't mind that. But the problem that the Democrats have is that they clearly have way too many freak shows in their ranks.
Maybe because these people, they are crazy because they always talk about how Christian they is. Yeah, I don't know how many of them on that side are getting divorced because they getting caught up sleeping with their co-workers, staffers, interns, all the things. Yeah, you ain't got to believe me. Just go Google. You'll find some of it. I'm telling you. And the wives is being messy and petty. They putting
So that is, of course, we all know who that is. That is Jasmine Crockett. Private school Jasmine goes ghetto. That's what she's doing. And whatever, but it's so inauthentic, isn't it? And then, of course, you've got Rashida Tlaib, you've got Ilhan Omar, you've got the far, far left radicals. And as you continue to watch the Democrats just spiral out of control, the problem that they have is the more that they try to correct course, the worse it's going.
Look, the Democratic brand right now has about the appeal with the American voter as the Cracker Barrel rebrand has with the American consumers. Bad, bad, bad. What are you doing? Oh, my goodness gracious. What are we talking about here in terms of big party registration changes in the key swing states? Let's look at the key 4 swing states that, in fact, do keep track of registration by party. Look, the Republican Party is in their best position at this point in the cycle since at least 2005, and all 4 of these key battleground states. We go out to the Southwest, Arizona. How about Nevada? Republicans haven't done this well since 2005. Oh, my goodness gracious, at this point in the cycle. North Carolina, I couldn't find a point at which Republicans were doing better at this point in the cycle. It's at least this century. It probably goes way back in the last century. And Pennsylvania, very similar. Republicans doing better at this point than at any point.
So that is Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Republicans are doing great. And it's so funny because I just played you audio of some of these crazed Democrats where, you know, they're calling, so dumb, Donald Trump is a Timu dictator, is what one of them said. Well, obviously, the president is doing something right. The Democrats, they don't have to like it. I think Donald Trump is way over giving a crap about what the Democrats are upset about or what the Democrats want, because it doesn't matter what Trump tries to do. If he tried to help the Democrats, it doesn't matter, because they won't approve of anything that he does. So then in the mind of Donald Trump, why would he even bother to make the Democrats happy? By the way, everything the president is doing is forcing the Democrats to react, and that is why they are dropping. Phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE. We'll return next.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. And if you want to chime in, but you don't want to call, you can text at 615-737-9986. People are calling on the text line. I played some audio earlier of Jasmine Crockett, and people are saying that she is a shapeshifter. Now, I'm not entirely certain. Maybe I'll look it up during the break. I'm not entirely certain what a shapeshifter is. I believe that what it is something that can obviously take any shape that it wants. And that's what Jasmine Crockett is indeed doing. Got a lot more straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric return next Sunday night, Monday morning. You can text me this morning at 615-737-9986. That is the text line that I use for my local show in Nashville, Tennessee, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. If you want to give that a listen, I'm on 6 to 10 Eastern time. That is 5 to 9 Central. And if you want to watch the radio show, you can find us on Super Talk 99.7 in YouTube, Facebook, 997WTN.com, and you can stream the show anywhere. So we wrapped up the previous hour with one of my favorites, by the way, Harry Enton. And he's talking about the gains that Republicans have made in the last, couple of years, specifically, I guess, in the last year. And he's focusing on Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Because part of what he is saying is that we have not seen the Republicans have this kind of a jump in registered voters in years. I mean, that's how good the Republicans are doing. And all of these states that I'm naming, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, I mean, certainly Pennsylvania is a battleground state. I would say that North Carolina is as well. Nevada has over the last couple of years, and certainly Arizona as well. In other words, you're probably seeing, and then I'm going to let Harry Enton tell the rest of the story, but what you're seeing is exactly the opposite of what the media is trying to sell you. Here's what I mean by that. The media, you've got all of these folks that just hate Donald Trump, hate conservatives, hate people that support Donald Trump. It goes on, right? So they're going to focus on all of these stories where conservatives may not agree with Donald Trump. For example, the 600,000 Chinese students. But the bottom line is, I don't know if Donald Trump supporters have a deal breaker as of yet with Donald Trump. I don't think that they have. I mean, if so, then we haven't really found it, because the Republican registrations continue to go up. You know, there's some minor skirmishes that we have with Donald Trump. I mean, I've had my own. Earlier today, I said about President Trump, he called the whole Epstein thing a hoax, which is a dumb word to use when you're describing these women as little girls as they were getting, groomed and sexually assaulted, molested, whatever you want to say. All of that inappropriate behavior. And Trump stupidly called it a hoax. Now, is it a deal breaker? No, it's not a deal breaker for me. It's a facepalm, because I think that Donald Trump continues to give the other side ammunition. He's a lot better now than he used to be. But if you want to talk about a political party that is shedding support, it's the Democrats. And I wrapped up the last hour telling you exactly why. It is because, number one, their ideas are simply bass-ackwards. That's number one. I mean, open borders and pro-crime. I mean, those are two big things. Open borders and pro-crime. That is what the Democrats are supporting. That is part of their party platform based on the last president of the United States. And so one of my favorites is Harry Enton, and he is just going, to the wall, talking about how much better the Democrats have done in years past, but they are now falling. They are falling. They are losing support. And I believe that one of the reasons why the Democrats are losing support is because they've become the party of the insane. And they don't have a lot of authenticity to them. In the previous hour, I played you audio of Jasmine Crockett. And I'm not going to make you suffer through it again, but she is literally playing a caricature. And it's not her. She's inauthentic. She is pretending to be street when she's not. Democrats, of course, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas. I mean, I could go down the list for a long time of what the Democrats are and what they are not, and how that is killing their party. Republicans seem to be doing a lot right. And, the left doesn't like what the Republicans are doing, but it's clear that the independents and the moderate Republicans and the hardcore conservatives all pretty much like what Donald Trump is doing.
Now, what types of gains are we talking about here for the Republican Party? Well, let's compare it to this point during the first Trump administration all the way back in 2017. Look at this. The Republican Party gains in party registration compared to this point back in 2017 during the Trump first administration. In Arizona, you got a Republican gain of 3 points. Okay, how about Nevada? Up the hill we go, even though we're sticking in the Southwest. A gain of 6 points. How about, again, we come to the East Coast, North Carolina, a gain of 8 points for the Republicans. And in the Keystone State, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, again, we're talking about a gain of 8 points. My goodness gracious for Republicans. They are converting old former Democrats their side of the ledger, as well as picking up new voters, registering new voters, and it absolutely paid off for them back in the 2024 election.
So the funny thing is, I'm always, spouting advice to Democrats on my local show in Nashville, Tennessee. And I always get people saying, Dan, shut up. You don't want them to correct course. And I agree. The problem is I don't even know if the Democrats even tried to correct course. Do you think that they would be able to? I don't know if I've ever seen I've been watching politics for years, man. I don't know if I've ever seen an instance where a party cannot get out of their own way. You know what part of the problem is with the Democrats? They got no strength. Donald Trump is the personification of peace through strength. Like it or not, you hate listeners, that's what I see Donald Trump as. The personification of peace through strength. And he has proven it time and time and time again. Do you know the Democrats' problem? Do you know what the Democrats' problem is? Like, even on an issue like, and we talked about this a little bit last night, but even an issue like, who do we support? Hamas, a terrorist organization, that is Hamas, or Israel? They can't even decide who to support in that instance, Hamas versus Israel. And it was such a divisive issue within their party that at their national meeting that they had last week, they weren't able to figure out a solution and they dropped the topic. So I don't know if that's a sign of weakness or a sign of strength, but either way, it is a sign of disaster for the Democrat Party. And you know what? I'm here for it. But when I talk about authenticity, you got Jasmine Crockett and you got Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is falling all over himself trying to mimic or mock Donald Trump. But in reality, he's just acting like the fool. That's what he's doing. One of the things that I find fascinating is as the Democrats continue to implode, is that the Republicans they're not, but they seem to be doing a lot right. Remember the other day? Was it yesterday? It's been a long week. Was it yesterday when we had the conversation about Trump where the Democrats were hoping that he was dead over Labor Day weekend? Remember that whole thing? And how really, really bad that actually made the Democrats look. Because they were hoping that he was dead. I played you the Tim Walz audio where Tim Walz is like, you know what? He wasn't dead this time, but maybe he'll be dead next time. It's just so incredibly vile. I know it, you know it, and Stephen Miller knows it.
President Trump has done more press conferences, more interviews, more transparency, more public accessibility, more hours and hours with the press. He live streams his cabinet meetings for nearly 4 hours. There's no human being in the history of politics who has made themselves more available to the press and the public than President Trump, or who has demonstrated more stamina in public life. I can tell you that every single person who works for him in the White House is outworked by him. He is the first one to call us in the morning, in the early hours of the morning. He is the last one to call us far past midnight on every single work project, whether it's trade, whether it's national security, whether it's the border, whether it's crime, whether it's public safety, whether it is making our cities beautiful again, whether it is making our government responsive, whether it's improving the workforce, whether it is dealing with the need for cheaper housing. You pick the issue. He's on top of it 24/7.
Yeah, and so for the Democrats to, number one, to be honest, I can't believe they're going down this road, but to try to talk about Donald Trump's health is, I think, such a horrible play. Because, of course, we all know what they did with Joe Biden, which was nothing. When we knew that Biden was losing his mind. Oh, Joe Biden? He's sharp as a tack. I'll never forget that. Where I think we all came back on like a Friday, or I should say a Monday, took off on a Friday and then came back on Monday. And it was abundantly clear that the Democrats had a new talking point about Joe Biden and that he was sharp as a tack. And so one of the big problems I think that the Democrats have is that they don't have any credibility because they've made so many mistakes over the past 5 years. You got 4 years of Joe Biden and all the mistakes that he made, all the mistakes the Democrats made, all the mistakes that the media made, and all the lies that they told. And now you've got Donald Trump, who, as Stephen Miller said, he is the most transparent president I think we've ever seen. I don't know if there's ever been a time where we've had a president who routinely allowed cameras into his cabinet meetings. But that's what Donald Trump is doing. But you got the Democrats, and what they love to do is they just love to lie. They love to lie and they love to obfuscate. And it's to their own detriment. It really is. Because if you were a moderate Democrat, do you want to put your name to this? That's one of the things that I like to talk about most about the Democrats is, you know, you can be anti-Donald Trump, and I mean, that's fine. You believe whatever you want. But how do you justify what your side did? That's the crazy thing. Like, look in the mirror, people, and figure out where you went wrong. Because let me tell you something, friends. For the Democrats, that is going to be a long look in the mirror. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. At a roadside inspection, inspectors may ask to see supporting documents. A supporting document is a document generated or received by a motor carrier in the normal course of business that can be used by law enforcement to verify a driver's logs. These documents can include bills of lading, itineraries, schedules, or equivalent documents that indicate the origin and destination of each trip. They can also include dispatch or trip records, expense receipts related to on-duty/not driving periods, including receipts for meals, lodging, and fuel, electronic mobile communication transmitted through a fleet management system, and payroll records, settlement sheets, or equivalent documents that indicate payment to a driver. Drivers using paper logs must also keep toll receipts. Supporting documents must contain the driver's name, carrier-assigned identification number or vehicle unit number that can be linked to the driver, the date, the name of the nearest city, town, or village, and the time. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. That is where we find Roy calling from Eugene, Oregon on Red Eye Radio. Beautiful, beautiful part of the country. Hey, Eugene.
Hello. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, about Mamdani, I can tell you how to handle this. He lied on his naturalization papers twice, not once, twice. He lied about not being a communist, and he lied about not being a jihadist. So, in my humble opinion, they need to denaturalize him and deport him back to Uganda.
There's been a lot of calls for that. There have been a lot of calls for that because, and I did a whole thing on this a couple of months ago, and I don't remember all the details, but I mean, I know that there's the initial, oh, you can't deport somebody for having a differing opinion as the president of the United States. and that is most certainly true. But he did lie on those papers. I mean, he did. You know what? I'm going to coming up after the bottom of the hour. I'm going to relook at that case and talk about where it is that he did lie on those papers, because what he wants to do to New York is horrifying. And if it can be proven that he did lie on that paperwork, well, then you know what? If he ends up getting deported, he ends up getting deported.
Hey, no loss to me.
All right, Roy, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. The phone number is 615, I should say 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Greg is in Michigan on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Greg, go ahead. Greg, go ahead.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm known as Mr. Positive in Detroit radio.
Oh,
and
okay.
I got to ask you, isn't there a lot of fracture with MTG going after Trump with the Epstein case? And real quick, what's happening with the big evil three, the empire, Putin, Zhang, and Xi in China, does that give you concern that something very serious is going on with those big three and how they might attack the USA in some way, shape, or form? I mean, I got to tell you, Dan, isn't Trump's approval ratings going down a little bit? I mean,
I think to be honest, I think they have been going down. I'm going to be honest with you, Greg. I don't really pay all that much attention to approval ratings, just because I don't necessarily believe in polling per se. The audio that I played from earlier, those were based not on polling, but on registered voters. But so you asked a two-part question. So number one, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is attacking Donald Trump, but I think that her fury she's getting it honestly. I mean, I think that the Republicans and the politicians, the House of Representatives, the DOJ, they need to do what they can to release these documents, because I think that these women deserve justice, because what happened to them was horrifying. Now, on to and I think that Donald Trump calling this whole thing a hoax was not the right way to handle this at all. That's number one. Number two, you asked about North Korea, China, and Russia. Yeah, it does worry me. It worries me a lot, but nobody wants a war. Nobody wants a war with America. We know that Russia doesn't have the greatest military, especially after the whole situation with Ukraine and that war. North Korea, they don't have the greatest military either. China, that's a different story. Thanks for calling, Greg.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. And I'm going to get to this Mamdani stuff here in a second. I want to make sure I get Bonnie's call. She's been holding for a while. Bonnie, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I've had a Red Bull and 3 cups of coffee. So as Ozzy used to say, I'm flying high again.
You know, I keep hearing people say that nobody is above the law, and yet all of a sudden, I don't hear anything about Hillary Clinton or Jim Comey or Barack Obama or John Brennan and what they tried to do during that election cycle. I don't want to sound like a dead fish, but I really don't care about Jeffrey Epstein. I think he was a vile man, and I feel sorry for the people who got hurt by him, but the poor guy is dead, and I wish they'd let him die. I really don't think it's such a big deal, and I don't know why Congress is going crazy over it.
Well, I think Congress is going crazy over it, Bonnie, because there's a lot of people that have been working and do work within the Trump administration who have spent years talking about the Epstein situation. You've got, and I've said this before, but Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, the three of them spent years talking about and keeping the whole Epstein saga relevant. And so Donald Trump brings them into his White House, into his administration, and they're expected to do and execute what they said that they would do if they were in positions of power. And they blew it, every single one of them. Well, I don't know about Bongino, but I know that Pam Bondi shanked it. She absolutely shanked it. So, and I get what you're saying, Bonnie, I really do. But this is a very high-profile case. If you want to look at this from just, forget right and wrong, which I don't, but just if you want to forget right and wrong, look at it from a purely political standpoint. You have the Democrats trying to take out Donald Trump with this story because they've been trying to pin this on Donald Trump and intimate and make accusations that he was involved with Epstein, involved with the girls and so forth. And, Donald Trump, he's just trying to, do what he said that he would do when he was running for election, when he was running for president and re-election after Biden. And so I understand your point. I totally do. This is a very public case. And Donald Trump turning his back on this when he campaigned on this case. Remember, Bonnie, he did campaign on this. He did campaign on, releasing the documents and so forth. So Trump is a man of his word. He's got a lot of other issues that he himself is passionate about. But there is a certain contingent of Republicans and conservatives that feel very strongly about this issue, incredibly strongly about this issue. And earlier, I don't know if you heard. Yeah.
I understand that. And I really feel bad for the people who got hurt by Mr. Epstein. To me, it just, I don't know. It just shouldn't be the forefront of the news when there are so many other things that are really going on. I mean, you had the one caller talk about China, Russia, and North Korea getting together. To me, that's a big thing.
Well, it is a big thing, and I did cover that extensively last night. But I will say that, Americans can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think that there is a lot of really positive things that we do talk about with Donald Trump. But to not cover it, I think would be, number one, a mistake on my part, because the mainstream media is using this as a story to go after Republicans and Donald Trump. And I'm using this story as an example of what needs to happen, how the Republicans can actually release all of this material. Pam Bondi can do what she needs to do to hold some of those men accountable, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, is holding these men who did horrible and reprehensible things. They do need to be held accountable. Now, whether or not that ever happens, I don't know, and whether or not anybody will ever be happy as it relates to the release of the files and the names and what's been covered up. That's the challenge that Republicans do face. The challenge Republicans face is that, as Donald Trump said in that soundbite that I played, is that you have a situation where, by and large, there's going to be a lot of people who will never be satisfied with the information that is provided, because they feel like there has been and will always be a cover-up in that story. But listen, and Bonnie, thank you for the call, and I really do appreciate it. I mean, she's right. In some sense, she's right. But I think that these victims, I think that they do deserve some justice. I do. But how that is done is anybody's guess. I mean, you can't just carelessly throw out the information, where if you have somebody who happened to take a ride on Epstein's plane, but he wasn't involved in all of that other nonsense, well, you don't want to put his name out there, because then his life is forever ruined. So you've got to do whatever you can to try to responsibly get the information out there and hold those people accountable, the awful things that they did. And I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think Donald Trump calling this thing as a hoax, he's got to come up with a different term, because this happened. It did happen. There are victims who are speaking out. So he's got to find another way to describe this other than, you can't call this a hoax. And I know, I can hear you yelling at the radio. What he means, Dan, is, I know what he means. What Donald Trump means is exactly what Bonnie was talking about, which is the Democrats are trying to use this as a focus of conversation and not talking about all the good things that Donald Trump is doing. I totally get it. I do. This is a tough one. And I will tell you, Bonnie, and everybody else that's listening, I have had knockdown, drag-out fights with my conservative friends on this. And to be honest with you, like, I'm passionate about the whole Epstein thing, just to tell you exactly where I'm at, because I'm all about transparency. I am all about getting justice for those women that we heard from yesterday. I am. But at the same time, it's not my priority. My priority is the economy. My priority is getting the gangbangers out of here. My priority is doing whatever we can to make the lives of the American people easier. That's my priority. And I can be passionate about all of those things and still care about Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I don't care about him. I care about his victims. Epstein, I'm glad he's dead. And I hope it was painful. Zorhan Mamdani. The controversy continues, and had a call earlier and said that he needs to be deported because he lied on his naturalization papers. Now, I did a segment on this. I mean, it was a long time ago. But I'm trying to remind myself of what exactly happened, and I think I found all the materials that I used before, where this guy, he is being accused of lying on his naturalization papers, and if he did, then yes, he can actually be deported. I mean, it would be bloody, it would be ugly, but he could be deported.
Does President Trump want Zorhan Mamdani deported?
I haven't heard him say that. I haven't heard him call for that. But certainly he does not want this individual to be elected. I was just speaking to him about it and his radical policies that will completely crush New York City, which is obviously a city that the president holds near and dear to his heart.
Right. All right. So that is Peter Doocy back when talking to Caroline Leavitt. And we know what he wants to do. You know, it's all the greatest hits of bad ideas, right? Defund the police, $65 million for transgender surgeries. He wants to allow people to use whatever prison they identify with. So men, of course, would go into the female prisons and frankly, probably start knocking up all the women. $30 an hour minimum wage, rent freezes, the whole thing. And it is crazy. But should he and does he deserve to be deported?
There's this Congressman Andy Ogles. He wants the Attorney General Bondi to explore denaturalization proceedings because he thinks Mamdani could have misrepresented or concealed material support for terrorism based on rap lyrics he wrote in 2017. Does President Trump think this is a worthwhile use of the Attorney General's time?
All right, so you may not know this, but Mamdani fancied himself as a rapper, and he wrote some lyrics. This is what this is all based on. In his 2017 song titled Salam, he included lyrics that have been cited as expressing support for the Holy Land Five. Now, the Holy Land Five, that is a group convicted in the year 2008 for funneling over $12 million to Hamas. Now, Hamas is a U.S. designated terrorist organization. The specific lyrics in question, they read like this. My love to the Holy Land Five, you better look 'em up. Another line, free the Holy Land Five, my guys, right? So clearly, he is showing support for this group that showed support for Hamas. And they funneled $12 million to Hamas. So those 5 guys, they were convicted on 108 counts, including providing material support for terrorism, tax fraud, and money laundering. Now, honestly, he is professing his love to a terrorist organization. So it seems to me like if he did that, and he did in this song, he did not tell the truth on those naturalization papers. And this is important. The specific mention of the Holy Land Five has drawn significant controversy, with a lot of folks calling into question his support for this Hamas-affiliated organization or these Hamas-affiliated figures. You see where this is going?
Well, I'll let the president speak to that. I have not seen those claims, but surely if they are true, it's something that should be investigated.
So that Congressman, Andy Ogles, is from where I live in Middle Tennessee. I know him well, the 5th Congressional District. He posted on the socials this: if this communist anti-Semitic jihadist loves the third world so much to the point he would lie about it to immigration officers, we can arrange for his speedy delivery back to Uganda. So the question is, if we went to go down this road, did he lie on this form? It's called an N-400. Now, when someone becomes a citizen, they have to disclose any support for terrorist organizations. The song was from 2017. Mamdani filled out the form in 2018. So it does appear that he lied about showing support for a group of men convicted of supporting Hamas and giving them $12 million. They were convicted on 108 different counts of providing material support for terrorism. So it seems to me like he did lie on that naturalization form. This is Andy Ogles, the Congressman Andy Ogles. He was on Newsmax to present his case. Here's what he said.
Part of the process when you fill out the naturalization forms, which, here's a copy of one here, is you've got to disclose your activities. So like communism, anti-American activities. And so in 2018, when he was naturalized, he failed to disclose some of the things that he had been doing, one of which was joining the Democrat Socialists of America. That's a communist organization, which, quite frankly, at that time would have disqualified him from becoming a United States citizen. So what we're encouraging to do is the Justice Department to look into the timing of his joining that organization. It would have been anti-American. It would have fit the definition of what he would have been required to disclose, and quite frankly, would have made him most likely ineligible to become a naturalized citizen.
So you see where all that plays out. You have the rap lyrics supporting Hamas, and you have him also joining a communist organization, etc. So there's a lot here, and I don't know if the Justice Department ever picked that up, but that is the story behind whether or not Mamdani should be deported. Got a lot more straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. Phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE. 1738 has texted in to 615-737-9986. I use the last 4 numbers as identifiers. He says that he believes that there is an espionage element to whatever was going on with Epstein. I absolutely believe that. I do. I don't know who he was working for. I don't know if he was working for Israel. I don't know if he was working for us. But I think that part of what Epstein was doing was getting compromising information on some very important people. I think that's also part of the Epstein story.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.